Are you too clingy? Is your codependent behavior starting to scare people away? Today, I'm going to cover what being clingy looks like, where it comes from, and how you can stop this behavior before it's too late. Hi, I'm Emily Baker from LoveLearnings. We offer the best relationship advice anywhere on the internet, completely free. So subscribe to my channel now for brand new videos like this one. So let's get into it. What does it mean to be clingy? Well, one of the problems is that it's not always obvious to the clinger that they're acting this way. With that in mind, I put together a list of behaviors that may come across as clingy. I'm sure we're all guilty of one or two of these at times, but it's when you engage in many of these behaviors regularly that it can make your partner anxious and ultimately drive a wedge into your relationship. The great thing about this list is that sometimes just hearing it out loud is enough for you to recognize your behavior is harmful and allow you to stop it with minimal effort. If not, we'll talk later in this video about how to stop being clingy. So here they are, the 13 signs that you're being too clingy. Number 1, if you assume that anytime you're both free, you'll be spending it together, you might be clingy. One of the main motivators of clingy behavior is self-centeredness. You assume that you and your partner are on the same page on all things. So if you want to spend all your time with them, of course, they must feel the same way. In reality, most people do have other responsibilities, hobbies, and activities outside of work, school, and their relationship. This doesn't mean they don't want to spend time with you, but that it should never be taken for granted. Number 2, if they don't answer their messages, you assume the worst, you might be clingy. Clinginess is often driven by anxiety. So if you don't get a message back right away, your anxiety takes control. You think, did I do something wrong? Or they're probably out having fun without me. Or maybe they hate me. And these wild thoughts can only lead to more clingy, smothering behavior. Number 3, if you go through their phone, you might be clingy. Going through someone's phone without their knowledge is beyond just clingy. It's a major breach of trust. But it's often driven by that desire for closeness with the other person. Just know that if you're doing this, you need to stop and figure out what is driving you to act this way before you cross any more boundaries. Number 4, if you're affectionate to the point of smothering, you might be clingy. We all need affection from our partners to feel happy and secure, but if that affection is over the top and takes on a desperate tone, then it stops being sweet and starts being alarming. You'll know this is the case if your affection is extremely one-sided, and instead of being flattered by your attention, your partner seems to brush it off and try and change the subject. Number 5, if you ask, "Are you mad at me?" you might be clingy. Now, I'm not here to say that this is a question that you should never ask. Oftentimes, it can be a great way to start a dialogue when it feels like your partner is stewing about something. But when this is your default reaction to any sort of silence or break in communication, this is often more about your own anxiety than any real issue that's happening between the two of you. If you miss them when they leave the room, you might be clingy. Intimacy is a tricky balance to strike. You want to leave a little room to miss one another and grow as a couple, but otherwise, closeness and interconnectedness is something we all strive for. It's a different matter when you're experiencing full-blown separation anxiety when they leave for work in the morning. If you're always texting them that you miss them anytime you haven't seen them in 24 hours, this is a major indicator of clingy behavior. Number 7, if you're jealous of their friends and family for taking up their time, you might be clingy. This is something that many people do without even being aware they're doing it. It's one thing to be upset that your partner keeps bailing on plans to go drinking with their friends, but if you're resentful that he has a social life outside of you at all, then you need to look at what's driving this jealousy. Remember that spending time with others actually strengthens your relationship. It's not a competition unless you make it one. And I don't know many people who are able to compete with the entire world for their partner's attention. Do you? Number 8, if you can't do anything alone, you might be clingy. This is something that is much more common with younger people. The inability to function without another person present. Obviously, this video is about romantic relationships, but this one can apply to family and friends as well. If you're unable to run errands or go to the grocery store without another person, you should know that this is a hallmark of clingy behavior. Interdependence is the goal of a relationship. When that interferes with independence, then we have codependence, and that's not good for anybody.
So we'll do round 2 for you here. See how many people qualify. What about things like...
Number 9. If you have an anxious attachment style, you might be clingy. I've talked a lot about anxiety in this video, but this is something different. An anxious attachment style is about how you relate to others in relationships. Do you have difficulty trusting people? Do you require more closeness than others to feel secure? Do you require constant reassurance that your partner cares about you? Then you might have an anxious attachment style. We'll talk later in this video about what that means and why it leads to clingy behavior, but just be aware that this could be a major driver of your clingy behavior. Number 10. If you ask all the questions, you might be clingy. It's normal to be curious about your partner's life and feelings, but there's a limit to how deep into the weeds you should be going if you want to avoid coming across as clingy. If your partner is replying with one-word answers and seems annoyed, then this is a clear indicator that you've gone too far. If you carry on a one-sided conversation, you might be a redneck. I mean, you might be clingy. This is for those people who blow up their partner's phones with text messages, one after the other, without any reply. And for those people who monologue endlessly while their partner sits there in silence. This can come across as clingy and annoying to all but the most patient partners. That said, this is one that you don't necessarily need to stop. If it's something that you and your partner have talked about, and you know that it's just harmless babbling. Some people actually find this charming, believe it or not. Number 12, you have unreasonable expectations. If you want your partner to be at your side 24/7, 365, then you might be veering into clingy territory. The real problem comes when your partner breaks this routine and you lash out at them. Don't do this unless you want to come across as a true clinger. And finally, number 13. If you reach out to them when you know they're busy, you might be clingy. This is related to the idea that you see your partner's friends and family as competing with you for their love. Be mindful of this one, because there's a good chance this is happening at a subconscious level and you don't even know you're doing it. Think about the last time you interrupted your partner because of a minor emergency when you knew they were busy with something very important. Next time, make sure it's not something you can handle on your own before ripping them away from their family dinner. So, that's how you act clingy. It's time to talk about why you're acting clingy. The problem with being clingy is that it's often driven by a lack of self-awareness. So just by watching this video, you're on the way to solving the problem. But just being aware of your clinginess doesn't make it okay. You need to look deeper at what is driving this behavior and do something about it. I think one of the biggest reasons that you may be clingy is that there's a mismatch in your desire for closeness. It's a pretty common pattern that one partner will want more closeness than the other. Rather than exploring this and reaching a compromise, most couples sweep it under the rug and create a negative feedback loop. So, in your case, your partner pulls away because you want more closeness than they do. This makes you anxious, so you cling tighter onto them. This makes them nervous and they pull away more. And on the cycle goes until you're on YouTube at 3 a.m. watching LoveLearnings videos about how to stop being clingy in a relationship. In extreme cases, this mismatch will lead to a breakup. If the mismatch is less extreme, then you'll be able to compromise. But if you can't keep the clinginess to a minimum, you're gonna end up in trouble. If that doesn't ring true to you, or if you've been clingy in every relationship you've ever been in, then here's a list of other reasons you may be acting clingy. You have low self-esteem. You've been hurt in the past. You have a fear of abandonment. You don't trust your partner. You have severe anxiety. You've never been in a healthy relationship before. It's also worth looking at whether you have an issue with hyperfixation. Do you get so focused on one activity that you shut out all other aspects of your life? This can be a hobby, work, or even a person. You see, when you hyperfixate on your partner and they don't reciprocate, then you may start to feel that you're lacking in some way. These are all topics worthy of their own video, but let's talk about what you can do to stop being so clingy and build a relationship where you don't feel the need to cling so tightly to your partner. The thing about clinginess is that it's driven by low self-worth, but it manifests itself in a very dominating, controlling way. Obviously, this takes a toll on the relationship. No one wants to feel like their partner is looking over their shoulder at every minute. So, there are a few things you can do to counteract this effect. First, you need to pinpoint why you're acting this way. If anything in the previous section rings true for you, then this is a great place to start. Now, there are obviously two major groups here. There are those whose clingy behavior comes from their own issues, and there are those who are triggered by particular aspects of their relationship or their partner. If you're in the first group, I'd recommend therapy if you're able to access it. Just simply talking through these issues can help you to sort out why you feel this excessive need for closeness at the expense of your partner's happiness. It will also be a great way to figure out the difference between normal intimacy and codependence, so you'll be more able to build a relationship that's healthy. If you're in the second group, then I recommend sitting down with your partner and having a frank and open discussion. I know it's not always easy, but trust me when I say that it's worth it if you want to save your relationship and create a compromise that works for both of you. Tell them that you know you can be clingy at times and that you're working on it. Explain to them how you feel and what makes you feel that way. If you feel that you've become clingy because of the way they treat you, then explain that to them in a way that doesn't feel judgmental. If you're not ready to take that step, or you already have and it hasn't helped, there are some simple checks you can put in place that will help you be less clingy. First, you need to create a list of things that you do that can come across as clingy. The list at the beginning of this video is a great place to start. Then pick the worst offender on this list, the one thing you do that you know is hurting your ability to connect with your partner. For example, say you know that you text them too often, and then get hurt when they don't reply, even though you know they're busy. Well, a simple solution is to just try and text them less. The next time you have a random thought or question, think to yourself, can this wait for the next time I see them in person? And while you're at it, look at your conversation and see how many texts you've already sent with no reply. Do you really need to send one more? This is a simple exercise, but it can be extremely powerful if you're looking to curtail that clingy behavior. Because, believe it or not, the more space you allow between you and your partner, the more likely it is that they're going to reach out to fill that space. And this kind of unprompted contact is going to feel much more fulfilling than a one-word response to your sixth message of the day. And finally, you need to look at the kind of person your partner is. Are they someone who ices you out, withholds love and affection, and otherwise keeps you at arm's length? There are plenty of people out there who fit this description. And if you're someone who prefers more closeness and connection, then this may not be a great fit for you in the long run. Just something to think about. That just about does it for this video. I hope I helped you understand a little more about why you may be acting clingy in romantic relationships. If I did, I'd appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'm Emily Baker, and I'll see you next time.